Hey y'all, it's Megan. If you are returning to my channel, welcome back, and if you're new, welcome aboard. So today is another history and trivia video. Today I am doing Expedition Everest. So I'll just take a second here to point out my husband's favorite sweatshirt. Mountain rescue crew. Let me see, you see the back there? It's got Expedition Everest on it. And he saw this in the gift shop as soon as we got off, and he absolutely had to have it, even though it was like 986 degrees when we were there. So he loves this sweatshirt, and I stole it for today. So we are talking about my favorite attraction at Walt Disney World, Expedition Everest. So before I actually talk about Everest, I'm going to backtrack a little bit to the beginning of Animal Kingdom. Animal Kingdom obviously opened in 1998, but when they were planning on Animal Kingdom, when they announced it a few years earlier, they had the idea that they were going to have these different sections, you know, the Africa, the Asia, and the Dinerland, but they were also going to have a Beastly Kingdom. They wanted to have like an area of like fictional kind of animals. They wanted to have unicorns and dragons and all that kind of stuff. So that was in the plan, but they didn't have the money or the time or whatever to make all of those happen at the very beginning. So they had to pick between Dinerland USA and the Beastly Kingdom. So that's why if you look at the Animal Kingdom logo, there is that little mythical looking little dragon guy on there, because it was anticipated that there was going to be these mythical creatures at Animal Kingdom eventually. They decided that they were going to do Dinerland and they would hold off on Beastly Kingdom. So they open Animal Kingdom, and then they finally have some money, and they're like, okay, now we're good. Now we're gonna let's expand this puppy. And then by that point, Universal had opened the Islands of Adventure theme park, which has Lost Continent, which was kind of the dragons and the mythical creatures and all that. And that opened in '99. So just 1 year after Animal Kingdom opened, Universal had that. And so they were like, okay, well, we don't really want to copy them, and you know, just a couple of years later, we don't want to be like, oh yeah, we have dragons too. So they were like, okay, we need a different kind of mythical creature. What can we do? What can we do? And Joe Rohde, the overall guy, the creative director for Animal Kingdom, who has traveled everywhere, decided, let's go to Tibet and Nepal, and let's do a Himalayas Abominable Snowman Yeti kind of thing. It's still mythical, but it also kind of falls into the Asia category that we already have in the park. So they were like, okay, this could work. So then that was what they decided to do. They were like, we're gonna have the Yeti be our mythical creature, our mystic creature that we're going to bring into this part of Animal Kingdom. So 5 years after the opening of Animal Kingdom in '98, on April 22nd, which is Earth Day, they announced in 2003 that they were going to be bringing a new attraction to Animal Kingdom, and that was going to be Expedition Everest. So the general storyline, I'm going to kind of just breeze through it real quick. The general storyline of the attraction, you probably are just like, oh, we're, you know, in Nepal and we are going on a train through Everest or whatever. That's what you assume. But there is so much backstory that Disney has, and we just we don't know about and don't pay attention to, and just, the Imagineers, I love them so much. But anyway, the fictional town of Anandapur, which is where Expedition Everest is, that little area of Asia in Animal Kingdom, that you are set in the city of Anandapur, and the tea company that they have for the area, they deliver their tea through the Forbidden Mountain Pass. Forbidden Mountain may sound familiar because that is the little subtitle of Expedition Everest. So when you're looking at the attraction, the big tall mountain that you're seeing is not Everest. That's the Forbidden Mountain. Everest is the little one off on the right. I'll stick a picture in there so you can see that. Yep, that's Everest. You know, forced perspective. It's a great thing. It's supposed to be like way far off in the distance. You're trying to get over there. So you are going through the Forbidden Mountain Pass on this tea train that they are delivering their goods through the mountain. Well, there have been some accidents with this train that go through, and people are a little wary. They're like a little hesitant, like, what's happened? There's been some damage done to the railroad. We don't know that we should keep doing this, so the railroad shuts down. So now a tour company has come in, and they've kind of like partially refurbished it, and for adventurous tourists who want to go through the Forbidden Mountain, they can board this train and go through at their own peril. They can go through this journey through the Forbidden Mountain. So that is your storyline. So you get there and you're going through the queue and you're seeing all the history of the Yeti, and you're seeing all of this stuff, and it's a tour office is what you're going through. You're seeing the ticket office, and you're seeing their little museum that they have to the Yeti, and all of those artifacts that you're seeing are actually from, well, not all of them, but a lot of them are from the area around the Himalayas, because Joe Rohde took a whole group of Imagineers. Like I said, they went over to that part of the world and they stayed there and they did a lot of research to get the theming correct. They wanted to make sure that it was culturally appropriate. They wanted to make sure that they really understood the history behind the cultural representations of the Yeti in that part of the world. And they bought actual artifacts from people who, you know, artisans and stuff who were selling them in the area. They would go into shops and they would be like, I want to buy all of this. And so, you know, they were really helping out the local economy, and they were also getting some actual things to bring back to use as props in the attractions. So you see all of those things as you're going through the queue. You're walking through the museum, the ticket office, then you get up to the train load, you get on, and you go on your adventure. Well, as you get through the Forbidden Mountain, as you're going through it, suddenly you reach a part where obviously the Yeti has come and has been doing some damage, so you don't know what to do now. Well then, while you're trying to figure that out and you're stopped, the brakes give out. And then that's when you go tearing off through the other side of the mountain, and you are just on a runaway train. So that is the general storyline of the attraction, like what's happening while you are on it, and a little bit of history leading up to how they actually created the attraction. So a little bit more about the construction of Expedition Everest. There are 3 separate components, and they all 3 have their own support systems. So they are completely independent of each other, but they are all intertwined within each other. That is the track, the actual part that you're on, the roller coaster part, the mountain that you're going in and around and on and under, and then the Yeti, one of the most infamous audio animatronics at Disney, and he's huge. So those are the 3 components. They had to build them all individually. The Yeti was actually constructed in LA at an Imagineering lab, and then they kind of packaged him up and they shipped him to Florida. So they kind of worked everything out. They actually had to use, for one of the first times, they used some computer generated modeling software that would enable them to put all 3 of those components into one 3-dimensional space within the computer, so that they could kind of run it and see, are these things going to ever interact? They needed to be able to get close, but not too close. You know, you don't want the roller coaster coming too close to the actual support structures of the mountain. You don't want the Yeti coming too close to the support structures or too close to the track. So they had to have all of this stuff kind of figured out very, very specifically. And I have seen that in some places within the support structure, the support of the track and the support of the building are sometimes within 6 inches of each other. So, I mean, that close. The actual track pieces and the steel beams that are supporting the mountain, they're within that close. And they were able to do those modeling techniques within this computer generated software. So that was, you know, a big step forward, and something that they wouldn't have been able to do, you know, 20 years ago. 20 years before that. It's been 20 years. Good Lord. So let's talk about the Yeti real quick. The Yeti did move. He started off moving, and he was like the biggest, baddest, awesome animatronic ever. I still think he's cool, whatever. But he wasn't just like a freestanding animatronic like, you know, Abraham Lincoln was at, you know, Great Moments with Mr. Lincoln, or any of the presidents, or any animatronic that you've seen, where they support themselves and they stand up on their own 2 feet and that kind of thing. He actually had a boom that was built into his back, and that's what supports him. If you've ridden Forbidden Journey at Universal, it's the same kind of situation where, like, if this is the ride vehicle or the Yeti, there's a post that is in the back that actually does the controlling. So that's how it works, is, you know, he's here and he's doing his thing based on what this arm controls. So that boom arm would allow him to move about 5 feet horizontally and about 2 feet vertically. So that was the range of motion that this animatronic had, and that would allow him to kind of swoop down and like snatch at the riders as they were coming through his mountain. That said, we're going to get to why he is now known as the Disco Yeti. So that is a mode of, like the letter A mode of the Yeti's operation. He has since consistently since 2009, but since 2007 basically. About a year after they opened, he had to be put into B mode. And then there was a brief moment in 2009 where he was operational in A mode, but they've since, they took him right back to B mode, and he's been there ever since. But B mode is just, he is stationary, he's in his position, and they use strobe lights to simulate the motion. And you're going through there so fast that it kind of works. It's not nearly as cool as when he used to swoop down and dang near take your head off, but it is what it is. So Disco Yeti was born, he's got his strobe lights, he's getting his Saturday Night Fever on. That's why he's called the Disco Yeti. That is where we are now as far as the development of the attraction, the history of it. The Yeti still doesn't move. He's still kind of frozen in place, frozen in time. Joe Rohde said at D23 in 2013 that he swears that he will get the Yeti operational again, because that's like his baby. Animal Kingdom as a whole is, but he definitely wants the Yeti to be able to come back to life at some point. But the problem there lies in the fact that I mentioned there are 3 separate structures all kind of intertwined, so they would kind of have to take the whole thing apart to fix the Yeti. And I just don't know that they have the time, money, or inclination to completely dismantle Expedition Everest at this point. So I don't know that they ever will just kind of take the whole top off of Everest and get down in there and tinker with the Yeti to make him go back to A mode. Don't know. So now we're going to get to the fun facts, my favorite part of history and trivia videos. Just a couple of little quick specs on the ride. It opened in 2006, and then it went back, it changed in 2007, and then it has been kind of like that ever since. The ride reaches a top speed of around 50 miles an hour. For perspective, Space Mountain reaches a top speed of 28 miles an hour. So you're going a little bit faster on Expedition Everest. It's a little bit more of a thrill ride. It's 2.5 minutes long, which to me seems like a pretty lengthy roller coaster, which I appreciate. I like a good long ride. It is 199 feet 6 inches tall, which is 6 inches taller than Tower of Terror. It's 199 feet. If you haven't seen my Tower of Terror video, I will link that up there down in the description. You can check that out. I mentioned Joe Rohde as kind of the lead designer guy, creative director for Animal Kingdom and for Expedition Everest. He also worked with a biologist. He worked with a lot of people, but I find it really interesting that Disney kind of has a biologist like on standby that they work with for animation and for attractions. And this guy's name is Stuart Sumida. He's a biology professor at California State University, and he also has been for many years now an advisor for the animation department at Disney and for attractions. He comes in and he's kind of like talking about the actual biology of animals and I guess humans too probably, but when they're animating they want it to be biologically, anatomically correct. So they consulted with him to kind of create what they imagine the Yeti is like based on cultural representations and actual physical anatomy of primates that we have, encountered and studied in actual nature. So he was there to kind of help develop what the Yeti looks like in the ride. Expedition Everest actually does have a single rider line, which is a little bit different from a lot of attractions. Most of them at Disney don't because they're family attractions. That's, you're coming with your family. But it does have a single rider line, so if you don't mind being split up with your party, or if you are just at Disney chilling by yourself, which, no shame, done it many times. It is off to the right of the attraction. If you're standing looking at the entrance, head off to the right and there's a little bitty sign that says single rider entrance. And over there to the side also I wanted to mention is a test seat. Expedition Everest is one of the attractions that, while most things at Disney are very accessible for every body size and shape, Expedition Everest is a little bit tighter. So if you are very tall or you have a concern about the attraction not being able to accommodate your particular body size, then they have a test seat over there that you can go and they can, you can test it by yourself. You're not in front of everyone. You don't have to get to the front of the line and then be like, oh, I can't fit. So there's a test seat over there. So if you are a really tall person and you don't want to have to ride, with your knees like this, then you can go and you can sit in the seat, pull the lap bar down, make sure that you're going to be comfortable enough to ride. And that is just over to the right of the entrance as well. I could have included this in the making of the attraction, but I want to put in the fun facts because I think it's hilarious and I love it. When they were doing the detail work on the exterior of the building, they had the rebar framework around the steel posts. So they make the mountain shape, they pour concrete over all of that to create the mountain. They weren't happy with just their trowel work making rocky shapes and formations in the concrete. So they took aluminum foil, crumpled it up, and then laid it out in big swaths across the concrete while it was wet. Let it dry, peeled it off, and that made these like irregular patterns of like rocky little craggy things that they could then paint over, and it would look very natural, and it would look organic, and it would look more like natural rocks. No one can see that from down on the ground. If you get your telephoto lens out, I guess you could, but that's just the level of detail that Imagineering puts in. They were not happy with it until it was perfect. So they went and they pulled out ye old Reynolds wrap and they made it happen. 2 more little fun facts before we finish this up, and they are my 2 favorite facts. Number 1 is there are about 1,000 snaps and about 250 zippers on the giant, heavy jacket that is the Yeti's fur. Yes, his fur is like a giant, heavy jacket skin that they can kind of take on and off. They don't. It's not like he gets undressed every night for a shower, but like, you know, they made the mechanics of the Yeti and then they had the fur separate, and that's a giant skin suit that they strap on there, and it is thousands of pounds and thousands of snaps and hundreds of zippers to get all of that fastened into place so that he has his fur on. And my last fun fact is the hidden Mickeys. I always like to throw a couple of those in there if I happen to know where they are. One of the most obvious ones at Expedition Everest is in the queue, and there is a lantern in one of the displays. I want to say it's the second display. Don't quote me, but there's a lantern in one of the displays. If you kind of like cock your head, you can tell that it's been dented into a Mickey shape. It looks like someone just like punched it, but it's a little, you know, the little 3 Mickey circles. And the bigger one that you can't normally see, here's a Google image of the aerial view of Expedition Everest. What you see, there's a hidden Mickey there too. So you can see that the mountain is the head, and then the tracks make little ears off to the side. But if you look closer, there's also a hidden Oswald. I don't know if it's official, but I think it looks like a hidden Oswald. Oswald the Lucky Rabbit, one of Walt's original low character creations. So, you know, you can see his big ears up at the top up there as well, and then the mountain still is his head as well. But, you know, big hidden Mickeys that you don't even know unless you're looking at Google Earth, but they are there because, once again, theme of the day, Imagineering is awesome. So that's it for the history and trivia of Expedition Everest. Are there any other rides that you would like to know the history and trivia behind? I'm always interested to see what you guys want to hear about, so leave me suggestions down below, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye, y'all.